Joining us today in studio to talk cannabis legalization in Canada is Barinder Rasode, CEO of the National Institute for Cannabis Health and Education. NICHE is a not-for-profit corporation with a mandate to advocate for legislation and regulations supporting the safe transition to a legalized cannabis market. The organization is at the forefront of the effort to establish a system of national standards to ensure quality control. Barinder, thanks for joining us on RegWatch. Please tell our viewers a little bit more about you and what the niche is that NICHE is trying to fill in the market.
My name is Barinder Rasode, and I'm a policy geek. I've spent many years in public service, being elected on Surrey City Council, working with Resource Works, educating people on the value of responsible resource development. So really what the most passion for me is watching people change their minds. The National Institute for Cannabis Health and Education bridges industry and government and educates stakeholders. Stakeholders who are supportive of legalization but don't know what it means when it comes to their community and to a store near you. So boards of trades, parent advisory groups, and the general public. The cannabis industry has done a great job on advocacy. Government has come forward with proposed regulations, and we know that the bill is before the Senate as we speak. But really, what does that mean to Canadians? And so we've come in to let the rest of Canada catch up on legalization.
So when you say the rest of Canada, you're talking about traditional business?
Oh, not only traditional business, but parents, healthcare providers, physiotherapists, veterinarians, everybody's a part of this conversation. But really, people don't even understand what cannabis is as a product yet. We have lots of stereotypes in our brain, right?
But this is Canada, though. There must be a good number of people that have had some experience with it.
Oh, absolutely. We know by far that of any of the developed countries, Canada has the most users of cannabis. We also know that the reason government's moving forward is because there have been court challenges on patients' rights to access for cannabis for medicinal reasons. So definitely we are world leaders, and that's true in the fact that we're one of the first G7 countries to move towards legalization at a federal level.
Now, is that a good thing?
I think that's absolutely a good thing, and I'll tell you why it's a good thing. Providing a regulation provides certainty and safety and standards that the public is looking for. I know the concern and support the concerns around youth using cannabis, but I'd much rather, if somebody is going to get access to cannabis, like young people get access to alcohol, that be through a regulated market versus Eddie at the bowling alley. And I think that what regulation is going to lead to is not only protection from a public health and public safety perspective, but it's also going to ensure that then the people who are engaged in the business are paying taxes and making a contribution to the rest of our country.
So tell us, how did NICHE start and how long have you been around?
So we're quite new. I came together with other policymakers like Jim Stafford, longest serving police chief in Canada, Trina Fraser, who is a lawyer who is very knowledgeable and aware of cannabis, and then Jo McLaughlin. She is a historian from McGill University who understands prohibition quite well. And so we're not directly tied to cannabis industry, the economic parts of the industry, but we're really here to have a policy conversation.
So who's your primary audience then?
So our primary audience is, at this point, decision makers and influencers, whether that's somebody who sits on the board of the Society of Pharmacists, or it's a municipal councillor who is a little unsure. They know government, of course, is moving forward, but there's always, you can go Google any subject in cannabis and you'll get 10 articles for and 10 against. And so what we're here to do is cut through some of that noise and be an independent body that provides factual information.
But it's fair to say, though, that NICHE is definitely pro-cannabis.
Oh, absolutely. The value that we see is in a regulated product, but what we also see is the value that cannabis is making to wellness. So whether it's for veterans with post-traumatic stress syndrome, or it's the moms that I talk to who are treating their children with epilepsy, or it's the seniors or the boomers like me who have aches and pains, who now realize that having a plant-based solution to some of their ailments is better than the pharmaceutical one.
We cover a lot lot, as you know, on the vaping for nicotine in terms of smoking cessation and harm reduction.
So I think that the whole smoking issue is going to be one that government is going to have to address. We know that in states like Denver, cities like Denver and states like California, they have buses. They have buses that you can get onto the bus to smoke your cannabis, and the bus roams around the downtown core. But that is something that I think government and regulators are going to have a conversation on, because at this point, nobody is happy with anybody smoking cannabis either, which seems a little odd when right now the bill before us is only dealing with the flower product, and the whole issue of edibles is not going to be addressed for another 12 months.
And why the delay on that?
You know, I think it's a harder product to regulate. What we know is that cannabis is a very personal experience for people. How people metabolize cannabis is very different. It's not like taking 2 T3s and knowing exactly how your body's going to react. So I think that the whole regulatory framework in introducing edibles is another layer. As Bill Blair has said often, and I repeat this because I agree, legalization is not an event, it's a process. And as we move along in the process, the issues of smoking cannabis, whether it's through a vape or the traditional joint, are going to have to be addressed, because patients are going to need to consume their medicinal cannabis, and recreational users are going to want to smoke it. But it's the same taboo that's attached with smoking tobacco or using a vape for tobacco.
Well, to a certain extent. I mean, the combustion is the issue.
Yes.
And so the public health advocates that are against vaping with nicotine, well, there is no combustion. Yeah. And they're still not so against it, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that they've been relatively quiet on the cannabis side, because they're progressives, and the federal governments are progressive.
And nobody's doing it technically. Nobody is doing it in the numbers they will be after legalization. So I think if it's passive now, I think that will change soon after legalization. So the lineups that we saw in California for people to purchase illegal cannabis products will be the same here in Canada, and then the issue will come where people choose to smoke it or vape it, and they will face the same challenges that they do with vaping tobacco. We'll see. We'll have to have another conversation about that.
Absolutely.
I know that it feels like there's this warm embrace for cannabis, and I think there is. But one of the things that we've been finding is that there is a little bit of a disconnect from the people who respond to the polls saying, yeah, we support it. But you know what? We support it if those people want to do that over there.
Now, why is that? I mean, has the federal government and the provincial government given local municipalities enough room to say, no, not in our county?
Every province except BC at this point, on this date that we're recording this interview, has come out with their framework for retail. BC, it is anticipated, the minister and the premier have said many times, we're going to have a hybrid model. So people can only assume that that means some private retail and some public retail.
So keeping some of the dispensaries as we know them here in Vancouver and the rest of the province.
The ones that have been licensed through both Victoria and Vancouver have licensing regimes already.
So Ontario,
yes,
on a grading scale, how did they do?
So from the public's perception and the industry's perspective, they got an F. They came out with a public model only with very limited number of stores. So if you're a mom in the Greater Toronto area, which is huge and the traffic congestion is insane, and you're going to have to buy your CBD for your child, and you're going to commute 45 minutes for it, that's not going to go over very well. Government monopoly, I believe in any industry, is not a good thing, and at this point, that's the only thing on the table in Ontario. So I think industry and the people that I talk to would give them an F.
So Alberta.
So Alberta has gone with a private model, and they're doing a more inclusive approach where they're reaching out. For example, like Manitoba is doing an RFP, which is I think a better model, because then you at least give entrepreneurs an opportunity in our free market country to participate in this new industry.
What about Quebec?
So Quebec is interesting. They've got a model where they've done some things that have left some people scratching their heads. So I always say pre-prohibition and post-prohibition communities. The post-prohibition communities sort of shaking their head a little bit about where I don't understand really how this is going to work.
So Quebec's a mess.
You know what? I think that they've taken a unique approach to this.
Always the politician.
Always, you know, we got to all get along.
So walk us through the Atlantic province.
New Brunswick, I think, has been the most engaged province and the one who's now has a whole department in their economic development division just focused on cannabis, which is, I think, really a wise way to go. As we know, work is changing. We know even, you know, McDonald's is going automated, and the nature of work people are doing is shifted, and lots of people are, you know, later in life or midlife looking at career changes where they wouldn't have been looking at the same changes 20 years ago. And they've really embraced this as an opportunity to not only generate revenue from this product, but also to create jobs.
So drug dealing pays?
Well, I thought you were rolling your eyes, but I didn't want to call you out on it. But no, it isn't drug dealing. It's we're moving forward in Canada to legalize cannabis, and that will include production, distribution, and retail. I don't even call it a drug anymore. I don't use the word pot, I don't use the word weed, and I don't use the word marijuana, because I believe that the cannabis of 2018 is going to be a product that is enabling people to add to their wellness regime, to their medical treatment plan, and to their recreational plan, where they're out having giggles opposed to violent bar fights because people drank too much vodka and are now angry people.
So is the argument then that when it's legal recreationally, we're going to have less bar fights?
You know, I think that there are, as you've probably read, studies that it does decrease alcohol use. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that we have become a society where alcohol is normalized, but I think we've also become a society where we're not mindful of the impact alcohol can have on people's lives. And I think that with decreased alcohol use is something that needs to be celebrated.
So does pot make you lazy, or are lazy people
No, I'm just going to jump on you right here. So this is where I think the stereotypes will shift. We're looking at baby boomers. We're looking at veterans. So the cannabis of today is different as well.
It's stronger though too, wouldn't you say?
But it is. But also we now know the division between using CBD and THC. So you can use cannabis without getting any high at all. So the CBD treatment as an anti-inflammatory for pain relief without any psychosis sort of effects on you is significant. We didn't know that back then.
So some Canadians are skeptical that the black market could get, you know, eradicated based on legalization. So what's your thoughts on that?
You know, I think that this government and how inclusive they have been and the level of consultation and understanding that they have, we have a very good chance at eliminating the illegal market, but it's not going to happen overnight. You know, if you read about prohibition in this country, it was, you know, there's experts who said anywhere from 5 to 10 years before the rum runners were actually put out of business. Is it going to happen immediately? No, it will happen.
We know at RegWatch that we have a lot of viewers that have said, hey, wait a minute, this is happening really too fast. There hasn't been a national conversation about this truly, and they feel kind of that they're being steamrolled.
You know, and I say that ask the licensed producers who've had their applications in for 4 years. We have been talking about this for a long time. Cannabis legalization, decriminalization of drugs is always on the Canadian political agenda, whether it's at party conventions or during elections. We've known for 2 years now that, you know, 2018's the date, summer 18, 2018's the date. So I say to people who say it's too soon, it's like, well, yeah, it's like procrastinating about your midterm. Or the example I use is we're pregnant, baby's coming in 9 months, and everybody's like, we're not ready, we're not ready. It's like, well, they can't change the due date. And then they're like, well, we don't know if it's a boy or a girl. And it's like, okay, you're not gonna do your due diligence and get your crib and your car seat because you're not sure of the gender. That's not how it works. We know legalization's coming. Provinces like New Brunswick have pulled it together. Other associations that are affected by this have done their due diligence and they're ready. And I think really this is what one of the roles NICHE wants to play in Canada is say, listen, it's time to catch up and make sure we do this right. And so let's get educated.